The morning sky over Seoul burned red as massive ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. Commander Lee Hana pressed her face against the bridge window of the evacuation transport, watching her world die below. The alien vessels hung in the air like metal clouds, their weapons turning cities into lakes of fire. "All civilian transports begin emergency departure now," Hana shouted into her communicator. Her voice cracked as she watched the place where her children had played yesterday disappear in a wall of flames. Down in the ship's engine room, Park Ji-ho wiped sweat from his face as he worked on the broken power systems. Around him, families sat on cold metal floors holding their few belongings. Children cried for toys they would never see again. Old people stared at nothing, trying to understand how their peaceful world had become hell. "The engines are failing," Ji-ho called out to his team. "We need to fix them now or we will all die here." The ship shook as another explosion hit somewhere nearby. Through the small windows, people could see other transport ships trying to escape. Some made it. Others fell from the sky like burning stars. Lieutenant Kim Minji sat at the control desk, watching her screens fill with red warning lights. "Commander, 12 different alien species are attacking us together. Their ships are everywhere." Hana closed her eyes for a moment. Just 3 days ago, Earth's leaders had tried to join the Galactic Council peacefully. They had offered friendship, trade, and cooperation. The Council's answer came in the form of plasma cannons and death from above. The alien leaders had called humanity dangerous. They said humans learned too fast, changed too quickly, asked too many questions. They said Earth was the infection that would spread through the galaxy if not stopped. High above the burning planet, an alien commander named Velketh watched the destruction through cold eyes. He belonged to the Veltar Empire, the oldest and most powerful species in the Council. For thousands of years, they had kept order in the galaxy. Humans were just another problem to solve. But as Velketh watched entire cities burn, something uncomfortable moved in his chest. The humans had not fought back with planet-killing weapons. They had only tried to save their people. Was this really the great threat the Council feared? Park Ji-ho finally got the engines working just as the ship's hull began to crack from the heat. "We can jump to deep space now, but we need to go right away." Hana looked at the tactical display showing 3 million humans packed into ships built for half that many. They had no weapons that could fight the Council fleets. They had no allies willing to help them. All they had was each other and whatever they could carry. "Set course for the Terminus sector," she ordered, "the galaxy's edge where no one wants to live." "Commander, that area is full of dead stars and hostile aliens," Minji said. "Nothing good survives out there." "Then we will be the first," Hana replied. She watched Earth grow smaller in the rear display as their ship jumped away from the solar system. "We will show them what humans become when they push us into the dark." The journey to the rim took weeks. Ships broke down and had to be abandoned. People died from sickness and despair. But others were born during the long flight, babies who would never see Earth but would carry its memory in their blood. Park Ji-ho worked day and night keeping the failing systems running. He learned to fix things with parts that should not work together. He discovered that human creativity could make miracles from scraps and hope. When the refugee fleet finally reached the Terminus sector, they found a region of space that the galaxy had forgotten. Dead planets orbited dying stars. Pirates and outcasts fought over worthless rocks. It was a place where civilized species sent their criminals and unwanted. "This is our new home," Hana announced over the ship's communication system. "It is not much, but it is ours. We will make it better." The first settlements were built inside old ships and carved into asteroids. Everything was hard, food was short, equipment failed constantly. But humans had something the Council did not expect. They adapted. Children born in the void learned to think differently than their Earth parents. They saw problems as puzzles to solve rather than barriers to accept. They made friends with the alien outcasts and learned their technologies. Slowly, word spread through the underground networks of the Rim. The humans were not like other refugees. They did not just survive. They improved everything they touched. They fixed broken alien machines. They made dead worlds grow food. They turned enemies into allies. Back in Council space, reports began reaching the leadership about strange activities. In the Terminus sector, ships disappeared near the border. Supply convoys went missing. But the Council paid no attention. The rim was too far away to matter. They did not know that in the darkness between the stars, humanity was becoming something new. Something that would make their fears about human danger seem small and foolish. The exiles were learning to be more than human. And one day they would return to show the galaxy what they had become. 20 years had passed since the burning of Earth, and the humans who survived were no longer the same people who had fled their dying world. Director Lee Hanna stood in the command center of Haven Station, looking out at what had once been impossible. The massive structure rotated slowly against the backdrop of a red dwarf star built from the bones of dead alien ships and human determination. Her hair was silver now, and lines marked her face like a map of 2 decades spent turning nothing into something. Around her, the control room buzzed with activity as humans and aliens worked side by side, speaking a mixture of languages that had grown naturally in the void. The Cathresh delegation has agreed to trade their crystal technology for our fusion cores, reported Chief Engineer Park Jiho from his station. His hands were permanently stained with engine grease, and burn scars covered his arms from years of working with dangerous equipment. Their silicon-based systems work better with our power sources than we expected. Dr. Cho Soo-hyun hurried into the room carrying a data tablet, her eyes bright with excitement. She had been just a student when Earth burned, but exile had made her into one of humanity's brightest minds. The hybrid engines are working beyond our best hopes. We are getting 3 times the power output we had on Earth. Around the meeting table sat people who had become leaders through necessity rather than choice. Jin Tai-hyung ran the agricultural domes that fed 50,000 people on food grown in artificial soil. Song Nara commanded the defense fleets that protected human settlements from raiders and worse things that lived in the dark between stars. The children born in exile had grown into adults unlike any humans before them. They thought in 3 dimensions, moving through zero gravity as easily as their ancestors had walked on solid ground. They solved problems with materials that should not work together, but somehow did under their clever hands. Lee Min-jae was one of these void-born humans. At 25, she could repair alien technology that baffled engineers twice her age. She spoke 4 alien languages fluently and had never breathed natural air or felt real sunlight on her skin. To her, the galaxy was not a place of established rules but a puzzle waiting to be solved. The Wanderer fleets want to meet with us, she reported to the Council. They have heard stories about our mobile cities and want to learn our methods. The Wanderers were nomadic aliens who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. They lived on generation ships and had no permanent homes. The fact that they wanted to learn from humans was a sign of how much things had changed. Admiral Yoon Do-yoon brought news from the border regions. His fleet of converted cargo ships and rebuilt fighters patrolled the edge of human space, watching for threats. Council patrols are increasing along the neutral zone. Their supply convoys are reporting more attacks from unknown ships. Hana smiled at this news. Those unknown ships were human vessels using new stealth technology that made them invisible to Council sensors. They struck quickly at military targets and supply lines, then vanished back into the void like ghosts. The attacks were not random acts of revenge. Every target was chosen carefully to weaken Council control over the rim sectors. Weapons shipments to oppressive governors disappeared. Supply lines to slave camps were cut. Prison transports carrying political prisoners suffered mysterious, mechanical failures that allowed their cargo to escape. In the lower levels of Haven Station, Dr. Kim Ji-won worked on her most ambitious project yet. The artificial intelligence system she called Prometheus could learn and adapt faster than any computer the galaxy had ever seen. It did not just follow programs, it wrote new ones based on what it experienced. Show them the latest test results, Hana said as they gathered around Ji-won's workshop. The young scientist activated a holographic display showing combat simulations. In the tests, ships equipped with Prometheus could adapt to any attack pattern within seconds. They learned from each encounter and became stronger. The system does not just react to threats, Ji-won explained. It predicts them. Our ships can know what the enemy will do before the enemy knows it themselves. This was the secret weapon that would change everything. Human technology had not just caught up to Council standards, it had surpassed them. Ships that could think and adapt. Weapons that evolved during battle. Defenses that became stronger each time they were tested. But the most important change was not in their technology. It was in their allies. The Kthresh Silicon Lords had been slaves to the Council for centuries until humans showed them how to break their chains. The Wanderer fleets had been isolated nomads until humans taught them the power of cooperation. Park Ji-ho stood before a holographic map showing human settlements scattered across the rim. Each point of light represented thousands of people who had refused to give up. We control 17 systems now, and more colonies join us every month. The Council made a mistake when they drove us out, Hana said to her assembled leaders. They thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they created something they never expected. In the depths of space, human children played in gardens that bloomed under artificial suns while their parents worked to build a better galaxy. The exiles had become something new, a people forged by hardship into something stronger than they had ever been on Earth. Soon, it would be time to show the galaxy what they had learned in the darkness between the stars. The mobile fortress knew. Terra drifted through space like a steel city among the stars. It was larger than anything that had ever been built on Earth, made from thousands of connected modules that could separate and reconnect as needed. Director Lee Hana walked through its central gardens where children played under artificial sunlight, their laughter echoing off metal walls that had become home. At 60 years old, Hana moved with the careful steps of someone who had lived through impossible things. Her hair was completely white now, but her eyes still burned with the fire that had kept humanity alive during their darkest years. Around her, the space station hummed with activity as humans and their alien allies worked together on projects that would have seemed like magic to the people of old Earth. Dr. Kim Ji-won stood before a massive holographic display in the research center, her fingers dancing through streams of data that flowed like liquid light. She was no longer the young woman who had fled Earth decades ago. Years of working with alien technology had changed her, giving her insights that bridged the gap between human creativity and alien science. The Prometheus system has evolved beyond anything we planned, she announced to the gathered council members. It does not just adapt to new situations anymore. It can predict what will happen before it happens. Our ships now think faster than any enemy can react. Admiral Yoon Do-hyun nodded as he studied the tactical displays. The human fleet had grown from desperate refugee ships into something the galaxy had never seen before. Their vessels could change shape during battle. Their weapons evolved to counter any defense, and their AI systems learned from every encounter. The Kthresh Silicon Lords have officially joined our coalition of free worlds, reported Ambassador Young Hyun-woo. His voice carried the satisfaction of a diplomat who had spent years building alliances with species that the Council had oppressed. The Wanderer nomad fleets have also agreed to our charter. 3 former Council client species have declared independence and asked for our protection. Park Ji-ho, now the chief architect of humanity's technological revolution, gestured toward holographic models of their newest ships. His hands were steady despite his age, still capable of building miracles from impossible materials. The new hull composites can phase through energy barriers. Our weapons adapt to any shield configuration. We have become what the Council always feared we would become. But it was the message from their deep cover spy that changed everything. Former Council Arbiter Velketh had been secretly working with human intelligence for 5 years, his guilt over Earth's destruction driving him to betray his own people. His latest transmission was brief but terrifying. Council expansion fleet, moving toward Terminus Sector. Final solution authorized. The galaxy's rulers had decided to finish what they started 30 years ago. This time, they would not just drive humanity away. They would wipe them out completely. Hana stood before the assembled fleet commanders, her image broadcast to every human settlement in the rim. Behind her, the flags of 23 allied species flew alongside humanity's banner, a symbol of the coalition they had built from nothing. They made us into exiles, she said, her voice carrying across the communication networks to millions of listeners. They burned our world and drove us into the darkness. They thought they were destroying us, but instead they forged us into something stronger. Lieutenant Commander Lee Soman had been born in the void 28 years ago. She had never breathed natural air or walked on solid ground, but she could pilot ships through impossible maneuvers that left veteran council pilots dizzy with confusion. Her fleet of stealth vessels moved through space like schools of invisible fish, striking without warning and vanishing before counterattacks could begin. "First wave launching now," she reported, as her ships dropped out of stealth near the Council's forward base at Nexus Point. The base's sensors could not detect them, until plasma volleys were already burning through their defensive shields. The attack was surgical in its precision. Human ships phased through the base's barriers, their weapons adapting in real time to overcome every defense. But they did not target civilian areas or try to cause maximum casualties. Every shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, to capture rather than kill. Within hours, the supposedly impregnable fortress was in human hands. Its garrison surrendered when they realized their weapons could not even hit the attacking ships. The base's communication arrays broadcast a simple message to the advancing Council fleet: "Turn back or share this fate." Dr. Cho Soo-hyun worked alongside alien scientists in New Terra's advanced laboratories, their combined knowledge creating technologies that none of their species could have developed alone. Weapons that healed instead of harmed, shields that protected everyone inside their range, engines that could cross the galaxy without consuming resources. "The hybrid systems are working perfectly," she reported to the command staff. "Human adaptability, combined with Cathresh crystal technology and Wanderer energy manipulation. We are not just building better weapons, we are creating tools for peace." The news from across the galaxy was stunning. As word of the human victory spread, entire Council member worlds began broadcasting their withdrawal from the alliance that had oppressed them for millennia. Species that had suffered under Veltar rule for thousands of years saw humanity's example and chose freedom over slavery. The exiles had returned, but not as conquerors seeking revenge. They had become something the galaxy had never seen before, liberators who offered choice instead of demanding submission. The Great Council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives from 12 species shouted accusations across the vast hall. Holographic displays showed the impossible truth. Human forces were striking simultaneously across 17 star systems, appearing from nowhere like ghosts made of steel and fire. Admiral Park Jimin stood on the bridge of the flagship Prometheus, watching through the main view screen as another Council stronghold crumbled before her adaptive fleet. The massive orbital station that had controlled 3 systems for centuries was now surrendering after just 20 minutes of combat. Her ships had appeared inside its defensive perimeter without triggering a single alarm. "Target neutralized, with minimal casualties, Admiral," reported Captain Kang Minho from the destroyer Haven's Edge. His voice carried satisfaction mixed with disbelief. Even after years of preparation, the ease of their victories still surprised the human commanders. That was the crucial difference between humanity's return and the Council's original attack on Earth. The humans could have turned every Council world into burning glass, but they chose precision over destruction. Each strike targeted military installations, resource extraction centers, and the slave processing facilities that fed the Council's cruel economy. Director Lee Hana sat in her command chair aboard New Terra as the massive mobile city moved steadily toward the Council's core systems. Around her, the bridge crew worked with calm efficiency that came from decades of preparation. The moment they had planned for since the first dark years of exile had finally arrived. The surrender transmission came from an unexpected source. Feldketh's ancient face appeared on the main display, his features marked by what humans might recognize as shame and regret. The former Council arbiter, who had once watched Earth burn, now spoke with a voice heavy with defeat. "The Veltar Empire formally requests immediate negotiations," he said, his words transmitted across the galaxy. "We acknowledge our errors regarding humanity and seek peaceful resolution." But the most stunning development was not military victory or political surrender. Across Council space, entire member worlds were broadcasting their own declarations of independence. Species that had suffered under Veltar dominance for thousands of years saw humanity's example and chose freedom over oppression. Dr. Kim Ji-won worked in her laboratory alongside alien scientists who had once viewed humanity as a dangerous contamination. Her Prometheus AI system had evolved into something unprecedented. Technology that did not conquer or dominate, but harmonized and elevated everything it touched. The Kathresh Silicon Lords report successful integration of human adaptive systems, she announced during the daily briefing. The Wanderer Nomads have incorporated our stealth technology into their generation ships. We are not building an empire through conquest. We are creating a true alliance through cooperation. The reports flooding in from across the galaxy painted a picture of transformation rather than destruction. Human medical technology was healing diseases that had plagued alien worlds for centuries. Human agricultural methods were turning barren planets into gardens. Human engineering was solving problems that entire civilizations had accepted as impossible. Admiral Yoon Do-hyun coordinated the final approach to Vel Prime, the Council's capital world, and the most heavily defended planet in known space. His tactical display showed defensive installations that could destroy entire fleets, weapons platforms built over millennia of paranoid preparation. But when the human armada emerged from stealth around Vel Prime, they did not open fire. Instead, they broadcast a message that would be remembered for generations. We offer the gift of life, not the promise of death. Lieutenant Commander Lee So-min led a squadron of ships equipped with humanity's newest technology, terraforming, devices that could transform dead worlds into living ones in a matter of years instead of centuries. As the Council's leadership watched in amazement, human ships began demonstrating their ability to create rather than destroy. Look at what we can build together, the human broadcast continued. Your worlds need not fear us. We have learned to turn enemies into allies, wastelands into gardens, fear into hope. The psychological impact was devastating to Council morale. For thousands of years, the Veltar Empire had maintained power through fear and superior technology. Now they faced an enemy that possessed better weapons, but chose mercy over vengeance, creation over destruction. Park Ji-ho watched from New Terra's engineering section as reports came in from human diplomatic teams across the galaxy. Former Council worlds were not just surrendering, they were asking to join the coalition of free worlds. The promise of equality instead of hierarchy, cooperation instead of domination, proved more powerful than any weapon. The final battle for Vel Prime never happened. As human ships surrounded the planet, broadcasting images of transformed worlds and testimonials from liberated species, the ancient capital's population began calling for peace. Massive protests filled the streets as citizens demanded their leaders end the war before their world suffered Earth's fate, but the humans had no intention of repeating the Council's mistakes. When Velketh finally agreed to formal surrender negotiations, he found himself sitting across from Lee Hana in a conference room filled with representatives from dozens of species, all working together as equals. You were right to fear us, Hana told the ancient alien leader, but you were wrong about what we would become. We were dangerous to your way of ruling through fear and oppression. We still are. The galaxy held its breath as two former enemies began the process of building something entirely new from the ashes of the old order. 5 years after the fall of the old council, New Geneva Station rotated peacefully in neutral space, its gleaming corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy working together as equals. The station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by dozens of species using their combined knowledge to create something none could have achieved alone. Director Lee Hana, now 70 years old with silver hair and eyes that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, walked slowly through the diplomatic quarter. Her steps were careful but determined, carrying the weight of decades spent transforming enemies into friends. Around her, former council species worked alongside humans, their ancient hatred replaced by mutual respect. The morning briefing took place in the Great Assembly Hall, a circular chamber designed so that no seat was higher than any other. Ambassador Young Hyunwoo stood at the central podium, his voice carrying good news to representatives from 97 worlds. The former Council territories report successful integration into the Coalition Charter, he announced. The Free Worlds Coalition now encompasses 112 star systems, with 15 more requesting membership this month. Dr. Kim Ji-won's latest creation hummed quietly in the depths of New Geneva Station. The Prometheus network had grown beyond a simple artificial intelligence into something resembling the nervous system of the galaxy itself. But instead of controlling, it connected worlds through shared knowledge and voluntary cooperation. Her terraforming project had transformed 43 dead worlds into gardens where any species could thrive. Planets that had been lifeless rocks for millions of years now bloomed with forests, oceans, and cities built in harmony with nature. The technology was freely shared with any world that requested it. Admiral Park Jae-min smiled as she read the monthly security reports from her office overlooking the station's central garden. Piracy had virtually disappeared from Coalition space, not because criminals feared punishment, but because desperate people now had better alternatives than violence. The rehabilitation centers on former prison worlds had become model communities, where outcasts and criminals learned useful skills while contributing to society. Even the most hardened raiders found purpose in building the new civilization that was spreading across the galaxy. Former Arbiter Velketh approached Hana in the Memorial Garden where Earth soil grew flowers from humanity's lost homeworld. The ancient alien moved slowly, his great age finally showing after centuries of life. His role as historical advisor had helped prevent the new coalition from repeating the old council's mistakes. I spent thousands of years believing we were protecting the galaxy from chaos, he said, his voice heavy with understanding that had come too late. We never realized we were creating the very chaos we claimed to prevent. Hana knelt beside the small plot of earth flowers, their petals soft and familiar against her weathered fingers. Each bloom was a reminder of what had been lost and what had been gained through that loss. You called us contamination, she replied gently. Perhaps you were correct, but contamination can also mean change, growth, evolution. We contaminated your galaxy with hope. The evening ceremony marked the 5th anniversary of the Coalition's founding, but it was also a celebration of something larger. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, a structure that housed thousands while making each individual voice heard and valued. Chief Engineer Park Ji-ho, now ancient but still brilliant, presented humanity's latest gift to the galaxy. Ships that could cross vast distances in days rather than months, opening frontiers that had been unreachable for millennia. The technology was shared freely with all Coalition members. Young people from dozens of species worked together in the engineering labs, their combined knowledge creating solutions that no single civilization could have developed. Human creativity merged with Cathresh precision, wanderer intuition, and the mathematical genius of a dozen other races. As Hana prepared to give the closing address, she looked out over faces both human and alien, young and old, former enemies, who had become family. The great hall fell silent as she stepped to the podium. 35 years ago, they cast us out because they believed we were too dangerous for civilized space, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. They were correct about our danger, but wrong about our nature. She paused, remembering the burning earth, the desperate years in the void, the moment when humanity chose mercy over vengeance and cooperation over conquest. We were dangerous. To stagnation, to oppression, to the idea that some species must rule while others serve. We remain dangerous to those concepts, and we always will be. The applause that followed was not the polite clapping of diplomats, but the heartfelt celebration of beings who had found something worth believing in together. In the station's lower levels, human and alien children played together in gardens that bloomed with flowers from 100 worlds. They spoke a mixture of languages that had grown naturally among the stars, creating art and music that reflected their shared heritage. Above them, the galaxy stretched infinite and welcoming, no longer divided by ancient fears but united by unlimited possibility. Trade routes connected former enemies in networks of mutual benefit. Scientific expeditions included researchers from dozens of species working toward common goals. Humanity had been exiled as monsters and reborn as healers, broken by prejudice and reforged in the fires of determination. But their greatest victory was not military conquest or political dominance. It was the transformation of the galaxy itself from a place of fear into a home of hope. The stars that had once cast them out now welcomed them as gardeners who helped civilizations grow among the infinite possibilities of space